We're down here in Newfoundland. We go fishing and we got our few cod traps put out and our few gill nets, and that's the only way that we had to make a living. I've got a wife and I've got 3 children. And if I put out a cod trap this summer, and my brother, he has a wife and he has 2 children, if we put out a cod trap this summer, we're depending on that for a living. That's the only means of income that we have. And if we put it out and a whale tears it up, we don't look at a whale in the same light as somebody from the mainland. I mean, it could be absolutely disastrous for us. We could end up on government welfare, like the Indians on the reservation, through no fault of our own.
Us fishermen, we're the fellas that had to put up with this. We're the only fellas that are losing.
Newfoundland fishermen feel victimized. Just when cod stocks were rebuilding and more fishing gear went into the water, herds of humpback whales moved into their fishing grounds. The result, $3 million in lost gear and lost catches. Fishermen are becoming impatient, angry, and some threaten to solve the problem with guns. But it's not the famous codfish that's attracted the giant whales. It's a tiny bait fish called capelin. There's a very basic cycle that controls the fishery here in Newfoundland. The capelin come to the beaches to spawn in June. They're followed by the cod, and now the whales. We call it capelin skull time. It's a time when young and old alike move to the beaches to harvest this resource. And for the fishermen, it means a time to place the cod traps in the water. There are over 5,000 cod traps in Newfoundland waters, and they're all basically set up like this one. A leader made of net running off from the land hangs in the water and serves to turn the fish in towards the box. That's the theory, but it's a chancy business. Weeks can pass with nothing being caught, and then the fish may strike in. A damaged trap can cost over $6,000 to replace. Although many species of the world's great whales frequent the North Atlantic, it's the endangered humpback that's causing most all the damage. It's estimated there are just 1,500 to 3,000 humpbacks in the entire North Atlantic. They winter in the Caribbean, and by early spring move up the eastern seaboard, heading for the rich feeding grounds off from Newfoundland. They used to head far offshore to the Grand Banks to feed on capelin, but overfished capelin stocks there have caused them to move to land, to the inshore capelin stocks and to the inshore fishermen. Whaling has been a part of Newfoundland's history just about as long as the cod fishery. This historic black and white film of the Pothead Whale drive may seem cruel and needless by today's standards, but to a race of people whose whole reason for being depended on harvesting from the sea, it was part of a way of life. With world pressure mounting, the killing of humpbacks was banned back in 1955. By 1972, Canada banned the killing of all whales. Whaling as an industry was over. For almost a decade, Newfoundland's pothead whale population continued to grow without incident or problem to the fishermen. Then, on July 14th, 1979, a rare and strange event took place. It was early morning at Point de Galle on Newfoundland's south coast. 150 pothead whales had beached themselves. A moving and still unexplained mass suicide. Local fishermen and Memorial University's Whale Research Group were successful in towing a few whales back to deeper water, but the vast majority perished. But as numerous as the pothead whale population is, they rarely cause fishermen problems. It's strictly a problem with humpbacks. It's midwinter in Springdale, on Newfoundland's northeast coast. Humpback whales have become trapped by the Arctic ice. This event was to mark the first real chance Newfoundlanders had to get a close look at these magnificent sea creatures. Finally, after a month and a half, a path was cut to open water by an icebreaker, and they were free, but leaving a very clear message to us all. Something was drastically wrong with the humpback's feeding and migration habits. They were moving inshore, where they would do battle with the inshore fishermen and their fishing gear. For this young humpback, the battle took place in the early summer, just 10 miles south of St. John's. While most of the over 600 entrapments were with cod traps and gill nets, this humpback became snarled in a crab pot and its anchor. When Memorial University's whale research group was called in by local fishermen to do a release, underwater photographer Bora Mertzoy filmed these rare scenes. The humpback was near exhaustion just before its release. Once freed, the powerful and graceful mammal moved north towards the famous whale feeding grounds near Bacalou Island. One of the most magnificent sights in all of nature is a humpback thrusting their over 50-foot-long and 40-ton bodies skyward. No one knows for sure why they breach. The area that consistently gets hit the hardest is St. Mary's Bay. Fisherman Cyril Gibbons has watched helplessly as the problem developed.
Well, I started fishing about when I was about 12, 14-year-old, my old man. And it was unusual to see a whale at that time. And right now, these last 10 or 15 years, they're like wolf packs. They come in 40s and 50s. And everybody mostly, you missed a day, but probably tomorrow you're tall. You can see now right down here is a man working at his leader. And the other men that they fixed theirs, there's another guy out there, he's fixing the leader that he had taught. And over in Peters River, it's the same story, up in the gas gears and all around. Every night you'll hear tell of some man getting tore up with whales. And apart from the cost of the material to replace the gear again, you're losing fish and you're losing time and you're working twice as hard.
Newfoundland fishermen spend the better part of their winters preparing their cod traps and other gear for the all-too-short fishing season. It can take a full day just to remove a damaged trap from the water before the repair work can even be started. Studies have shown that damage generally occurs at the time when fish catches would have been the highest, and this, for the fishermen, is a crisis.
Each fisherman here, or each man have gear here, he fishes with 6 in a crew. And there are 6 families which is depending on that for a living. And so along with the expense of repairing the gear again, here you're losing fish, which means you're losing money.
Scientists and government officials have been reluctant to lay blame for this problem, but inshore fishermen have little doubt who the culprits are.
First the Russians came and they depleted our cod stocks. Now they come now and they're going to finish off our capelin stocks. That means that there's nothing for the whales to feed on, and therefore they're hunting for every bit of bait they can come up with, and which is the only inshore capelin that's left. And this is why the whales are close to shore.
Although the offshore capelin fishery has now been banned by the federal government of Canada, there's little likelihood of the humpback whales returning to their offshore grounds in the next few years, and some fear they may never go back. It's generally agreed that humpbacks have sophisticated sensing devices. In the past year, university scientists and private groups have tried acoustical pingers and beepers to alert the whales to fishing gear. Net alarms are a possible solution to the problem, but their success has yet to be totally proven. Last summer, it's estimated that 30 whales died while tangled in fishing gear, a startling figure for a still endangered population. This humpback died while caught in a cod trap near New Harbour, Trinity Bay. An awesome sight, a tragic sight. The whale has floated to the surface upside down, revealing the long folds of the expanded stomach wall. Wesley Williams and other members of the trap crew were helpless as they saw the trap and the whale being destroyed.
Thursday morning, we came down to haul the trap and the whale was in the leader. And they came to blow so hard we couldn't do nothing with it, so we had to leave. Thursday evening, we came down and he was after coming out of the leader and getting into the trap. He's got all the leader torn up and it had the whole trap completely submerged underwater. And it only come to the surface yesterday, Friday morning. I'd say offhand there's a couple of $1,000 damaged right now, and it could be more.
The university's whale research group, led by John Lien and divers Bora Murdzoy and Scott Wilson, responded all last summer to a request from fishermen to release whales, an arduous task that sometimes took 2 days.
Oh, it's no question. It's a major tragedy. The cod trap is a very finely crafted tool, which is nice to look at. It's beautifully done. It's very sophisticated in a primitive sort of way. And when you see one of these just tore up and tangled up, it's just a really sad thing. But then recognizing the social and economic consequences of that accident, it makes it even sadder because it costs fishermen their livelihood when that's torn up.
Scotty, can you slide up that way a bit, okay?
Well, usually just after they die, they sink to the bottom of the trap. And then the first job is to put air into them and refloat them. This guy floated up by himself, and he floated up under the floor and rolled in the floor. We've been trying to roll him over so we didn't have to cut the floor of the trap. We couldn't do that, so just now we had to slice the floor of the trap, and we're just in the process of feeding the floor back to the tail of the whale. But right now, some of the twine is caught in the baleen, so the divers are down freeing that up.
The hell it is, I don't know how to swim.
This is a bigger whale. What's been the case so far with the trapped whales and all the dead whales? There's been more trapped whales than dead whales. They've all been small animals. This one is probably about 33 feet. It may not even be sexually mature. with the live animals, it's much easier to get them out because they'll strain against you, and so you can always just pick at the tight twine and the tight ropes, and you know exactly what you have to release. When they're just dead in the water, all the twine is sort of loose, and it's very difficult to figure out what to do next. Just take that line in.
As far as the whale goes, it's also a tragedy. Oftentimes the whale isn't killed, he's simply injured or goes off towing gear, and I think that's even sadder. You have an animal who's a presumably intelligent mammal towing this gear around, being really very handicapped. And when he does that, he's highly liable to have another accident. We've traced, for instance, a single whale through accidents with 6 different sets of gear. So the animal, I think, gets hurt in some of these. He becomes confused, disoriented, weak, and his life sort of is in a rapid downward course. So it's a fairly sad thing for the whale.
Research into the whale problem has been carried out by land-based observers from the university. During the past couple of years, private groups have involved themselves in this problem. Unfortunately for the whales and the fishermen, there's still been no coordinated research effort mounted. Baccalieu Tickle, a famous place for generations of Newfoundlanders, and now a famous congregating ground for the humpback. Keith Hay, a federal fisheries research scientist, would spend a lot of time here doing whale counts when weather permitted. While aerial counting may be easy when the humpback winters in the clear water of the Caribbean, here in the cold, dark North Atlantic, sightings are not often easy. This was an exceptional day and permitted fairly accurate counting. Each individual humpback has its own distinct tail markings. They're sort of like a king-size fingerprint, with no two being alike. Humpbacks from the Baccalieu Tickle area usually migrate in and out of nearby Trinity Bay, and last summer, many moved north to Bonavista Bay. While most move in groups from 2 to 10, it's a very special sight to see the female with her young calf. Their precision-like movements when approached by the helicopter give witness to a very sophisticated communication system. It's the height of the trap season near Portugal Cove South. A humpback has become entangled, rendering the trap useless. The university research group is into the second day with this entrapment, and they've still not been able to free the whale. Fishermen are anxious to get back fishing, but they also have another concern.
The fishermen are very worried that they would be held up to ridicule in the same way the people in the seal fishery have been sort of castigated for their work. And fishermen who accidentally catch whales certainly feel they don't deserve any static from the mainland about this problem. I think it's fair to say that the way to solve the problem is to work with our fishermen. Certainly there are things that have to change in the fishery. Fishermen are going to have to learn to use alarms, are going to perhaps have to learn to use gear in different ways, or perhaps going to have to modify some of the practices of the fishery. So you have to work with Newfoundland fishermen, and the only people really that can do this are people that are sensitive to their problems and the way they work and so on.
Got one line cracked off anyway. There it is.
I would feel very bad making fishermen more dependent on government or university experts. I think that's the wrong strategy. to approach helping the fishermen with. Fishermen certainly for years have gotten whales out of gear. They're competent at it, they're experts in their areas. The way we can help them is perhaps develop some tools which will give them an assist in this, maybe develop some techniques which they hadn't thought of or perfected. When you release the whale, you know you have half your problem solved. And so usually we yell and scream at the whale and celebrate for 5-10 minutes, and then we go at the fishing gear. Once a whale goes in, there is a really good feeling about it. They're magnificent animals, and you really feel sort of proud to have assisted them.
First, when the problem with whales developed 3 years ago, fishermen worried just for their fishing gear. But as the number of contacts with whales increased, an even more serious concern developed. Brian Walsh and his crew from Beta Verde fished the whale-infested waters of Bacaloo Tickle.
I think it's getting pretty dangerous. We had a very close encounter. We were hauling the cod trap, and while we were hauling the trap, the whale got entangled into the V moorings and the V twine. I know it was a very close call. And I think and it seems that the whales are getting bolder and bolder. It's like if you're hauling a trap, if you get any fish in the trap, they seem to come around the trap. I don't know if they're hungry or what. Well, even as 5 years ago, a whale was a pretty unusual sight.
Yeah.
But now they're very common. It's sort of like the seal hunt. I think if you mention whales out of Newfoundland especially, or in the media or anything, a lot of people tend to become emotional about it. But to me, I look at it as a threat. I think somebody has to get drowned at first. I think if a couple of fellows would get drowned, it'd probably straighten the problem out. Unfortunately, that's probably the way it has to happen. I don't think they have any understanding of it at all, any more than I suppose we have any understanding of some of the problems of mainland Canada. I think, like I said, it's like the seal hunt. It's the same thing. Somebody says whales are an endangered species, and then somebody announces that they've communicated with a whale. Yeah. So right away they figure out a whale has so much intelligence. Of course, what they don't realize, you can also communicate with a dog.
Yeah.
Or you can communicate with the people who've said that they've communicated with their flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty complicated, really.
And the confrontation continues to escalate. All last winter, fishermen pleaded for help. But their patience is wearing thin. Talk of a government that couldn't handle the problem, of not even putting their traps out, and even of killing some whales themselves, echoed about the twine lofts throughout Newfoundland. Fishermen were preparing for another season.
I'm not for destroying whales or killing all the whales, but if you've got your means of making a living, and if you've got your home or you've got your means of making a living, and once something threatens that, I mean, you're going to react to it. Sometimes I feel pretty upset about people who is sort of shoving their righteous indignation down in somebody else's throat. I mean, it's all right to say that you're against the killing of whales, which is all well and good. There's nobody in favor of the whale becoming extinct, and God help me, I wouldn't want to. I'd be the last person to advocate that, killing every whale that's out there. But if a person is so strong in advocating that whales should not be destroyed for any reason, I think they should be willing to put their money where their mouth is and be satisfied to compensate us. Because we are the people who was paying the ultimate price. We pay for it with our livelihood.
the Newfoundland fishermen are concerned for their way of life. The world is concerned for the plight of the humpback whale. Both require tough management decisions to be made immediately. Canadians have told the world, we will do our part to save the great whales. It is totally unfair to expect the Newfoundland fishing community to bear the entire cost of this on their shoulders.
The Problem with Whales was directed and narrated by Herb Davis. The cinematographer was Ed Bowdring, with additional photography by Nigel Markham and Eric Crickbaum. Sound was recorded by Kevin Hanlon and Sterling Snow. The film was edited by Lloyd Pennell. I'm Don Franks, and John Lackey is the executive producer of This Land.